On today's show, what's next for the Dallas Mavericks? What move will they make? Are they still trading Tim Hardaway Jr.? Is Theo Pinson gone? What moves will they make next? And we'll talk about the midseason tournament on today's Locked On Mavs.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks podcast.
The Dallas Mavericks are NBA champions. Bang! Bang! It's good!
And the Mavericks have won the game!
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
And welcome. You are locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and NBA channel manager for the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for being part of the show and making Locked On Mavs your first listen every day. Subscribe, follow for free. Just search Locked On Mavericks wherever you get your podcast or on YouTube. But the best way you can help us grow the show is to listen every day and to comment anything below. Let us know in the comment section, what move will the Mavericks make next? I still want to know that. I'm still here at NBA Summer League. If you hear the cheering and the lack of people in the room, it's because the Wembanyama game just ended and everyone left. everyone basically left, but we're still here. And joining me, as always, my co-host, writer, contributor at Mavs.com, the Dallas dude, the One More Thing King. What you got for me, Isaac Harris?
All right, I gotta know some details. You went to NBA Con in Vegas today. You posted some stuff on the Twitter sphere, and you bid on a jersey for Luka. You saw some I don't know, just some kind of no-namer.
Yeah, I bid on it. Totally bid on it.
There's some kind of no-namer NBA guys who were retired who kind of, did some interviews on a stage. But what was that about?
Yeah, so I saw the logo himself, Jerry West. Great. And then I saw Cap. I saw Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and they spoke. And then some unnamed NBA player named Richard Jefferson was interviewing them. It was the weirdest collection of players, but it was awesome to hear those guys, just living legends, get to talk. It was kind of the main reason I went to NBA Con. But yeah, there's a bunch of cool Maverick stuff. They had a bunch of just like interesting designers and different kind of like NBA, apparel than we're normally used to at like the NBA shop or something like that. They had stuff like that too, but it was cool. It was a massive convention center, and they had a full court basketball court in the middle of it, and it still felt like there was a ton of room all over the place. So there's games and stuff for kids and $12 snow cones, and there was a lot of stuff there. I'm glad I didn't have to pay for it, but I went, and I'm glad that I got that. And that Luka jersey that you said was on auction. Did you see how much it was for?
A little bit. I mean, I think it was a little bit past our locked on paycheck.
$47,000 for the Luka game worn jersey, and that blew me away. I went to the guy and I said, "How do you decide how much to price these?" He just basically told me it's an imperfect science. I was like, "Oh, I bet."
Tell Jackson Gatlin next to you, host the Locked On Rockets, that's what Dylan Brooks will make every second.
Yeah, and it keeps going up too because they keep upping the offer. All right, on today's show, we're getting into a bunch of stuff about the Mavericks and about rumors and about. We'll get into what the Mavericks are doing with Tim Hardaway and what the Mavericks are maybe going to do with the MLE. And should the Mavericks just keep JaVale McGee? Should they stretch and waive his contract? What should they do? And then we're going to talk about the midseason tournament on that. The midseason tournament was announced the other day by Adam Silver here. A lot of people are talking about it. They're talking about Wembanyama first, but they're talking about the midseason tournament as well. And so we'll talk about that. But let's get into this. So a couple of rumors we haven't really gotten to. First one, not the most important, but maybe the most important to us, is that the Mavericks, according to Mark Stein, have indeed likely moved on from Theo Pinson. # more than a hype man. We'll always have the Rudy Gobert story on this podcast. Go listen to that one just for the memories and the feels.
I love Theo. He was great to have around, a great interview. But yeah, I mean, as they add the young guys to the team, especially adding 2 draft picks and, wanting to change over the roster, then it made sense. And it still sucks. I know Kirk Henderson's really sad about it, but I'll miss having Theo around.
Yeah, there's just not enough space anymore. You add 2 rookies who we're not sure how much they're going to play, but you add that. You add Dante Exum as another like flyer type guy. And there's just not another space for him. So we love Theo, loved his, the vibes and all that. Could he be back? Sure. But, Mark Stein says they're likely moving on from Theo Pinson at this point. So that's not the biggest news. The other one is Mark Stein reported the Mavericks are, trading Tim Hardaway Jr. or releasing JaVale McGee are the only expected moves as of right now left for the Dallas Mavericks. What's your thoughts on the Tim Hardaway Jr. trade? Is it Is it worse that it still hasn't happened at this point, or is it just, hey, it's still on the table, anything can happen with trades?
Whoa, big time play there in Vegas as the crowd erupts. No, I mean, yeah, I still expect Tim to be gone. I said the other day in subtext, I'm like, JaVale's not going to be back. So whether that's, I think in a perfect world, Dallas is putting him in the trade with Tim to go somewhere else. But like, Mark Stein said in his Substack that, if they can't find a trade that they like, a bigger trade or something, that they could always do the waive release thing, stretch him out over a handful of years there, but stretch him out. But there's only, he's due like $5 million.
Yeah, so on the Tim Hardaway thing, yeah, that seems to be a move everyone expects still. And there's a bunch of different options, and we've gone over a ton of them. We've talked about a bunch of different options for the Mavericks. If they want to get a center, they have those 2 second-round picks now, so they have some other options with Tim. But that's the last expected move, because it just doesn't make sense for them to go into the season with Tim, with Seth Curry, and then Jaden Hardy looked really good in Summer League. We think he's taking the next step going forward, and so we think that to make room for, Jaden Hardy minutes and even Omax minutes, if you want to, because Tim goes back and forth between a wing and a guard. To make room for both of those guys, you have to move on from Tim at a certain point. You got Seth Curry. I think he can bring everything that Tim Hardaway brought to the team last year, and he'll probably be better in transition as well than Tim Hardaway. But so that's what's going to happen next. And then, but what do you think about the trading or releasing or just keeping JaVale? What are your thoughts on that and that being a possibility?
I don't see a world in which they keep him. But yeah, I mean, I think perfect world, you're trading him, but there's, you could still, yes, you could do the stretch provision on him and all of that. And I don't know if it's really worth that, but then it'd be on the books for a handful of years there with this $5 million stretched out. So I don't know. I just think he's going to be traded somewhere before it's all said and done.
I do too. I think the only reason why they would stretch him is that they had something else to do this year, right? You don't just do that just because going forward. I mean, it's just money on your books. You might as well just take him into this year, and you could release him and still have this contract on the books. But then, you have what, $5 million this year, and like $6 million next year. You might as well just run out the contract next year and just have him as he has a player option. Maybe he'll turn it down or whatever, but he's more than likely to pick that one up. But even if he does, it's an expiring contract at that point. And so it's less, it's a little more tradable if it's an expiring contract like Davis's kind of was. And so I see them doing that. I don't see a reason for them to just waive him just for the heck of it, or to stretch the contract just for the heck of it because they have nothing else to do this year. But if they have something else to do this year and what if they need a couple extra million for a trade where they're trading Tim for some guys that make salaries that are, a couple more than Tim, they may need some of that space and some of that flexibility, and so they do that. So if they do stretch and waive JaVale, then maybe there's something else on the horizon that they're doing that they need that for. That would be my guess and my read on that situation. But those are the moves that we expect, from the Mavericks next. But coming up, let's get into what the Mavericks can do with the MLE. Now that Matisse Thybulle is not going to fill that role, Grant Williams didn't fill that role, and the Mavericks still have this $12.4 million MLE. And so let's talk about what they can do with that next. So talk about that coming up. But before we do, let me tell you about Ibotta. If you are finally taking that summer vacation, I know that I just took a trip to Vegas and you're dreading buying all the necessities before you take off. It's time to stop spending your hard-earned money without getting anything in return. Enter Ibotta. Ibotta gives you cash back on hundreds of grocery items, from produce to personal care to pantry goods, so you can make the beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. Either link your royalty account or upload your receipt after you shop, and you can get cash back. It's super easy. The average Ibotta user earns $120 per year. $120, and everybody can use that. You can earn cash back on hundreds of online brands and retailers too when you start with Ibotta, including Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, all that kind of good stuff. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta using the code LOCKED when you register. Go to the App Store, Google Play Store, download the free Ibotta app, use the code LOCKED. That's Ibotta, IBOTTA, in the Google Play or App Store. Again, use the promo code LOCKED. All right. Part of the Raccoon Squad, part of the Everydayers group. We appreciate each and every one of you. And The music just looped. I didn't want it to do that. All right, let's talk about the MLE. So the Mavericks have this mid-level exception where it's $12.4 million. That's space that they can sign a free agent. We thought they were going to use it on Grant Williams. We talked about that for a long time. Then they ended up signing and trading for him, so that didn't work out. But it worked out better for the Mavericks in the long run. Then they signed Matisse Thybulle to an offer sheet. The Blazers matched on that, and now he's not part of that. So what do the Mavericks now do with this MLE? They have $12.4 million. And I got a question on Subtext this weekend about, can they just roll it over to next year? It doesn't work like that. By the beginning of the season, that goes away. You can't use that. And so they have to use it by this offseason. And so what could they do with that next?
Yeah, well, I think Mark Stein said it in his Substack chat, or one of his pieces, that they're looking at taking a step back of using that right now. And it's just simply, we said on, I think yesterday's show or one of the shows over the weekend, if you're a Monday listener, you don't listen over the weekend, we have some shows from the weekend you need to listen to. There's really not anybody else left on the market that you're willing to give that money to outside of a PJ Washington, which it doesn't look like PJ Washington's trying to, get MLE money. He wants more. Charlotte and them, they're just playing this big staring game right now. I'm a big fan of Io, so I would entertain giving a good chunk of that to Io from Chicago, but it sounds like, it doesn't look like Dallas is really interested in that. So if you're not interested in somebody on the market for the MLE and you're like, all right, well, let's just go ahead and split it up at this point. Well, how much are you splitting it up? Like, how much more after you split is then a minimum contract, and then who's worth it at that point? So I think, especially when you look at the roster spots, there's basically only one open main roster spot right now. So I think what Dallas is looking at the moment is probably, now we haven't seen Seth Curry officially signed yet. They officially signed Dwight Powell, and I know a lot of Mavs fans were really excited about that one. You actually should be. I'm glad that Dwight's back for that number.
Do the windy fingers on the Seth Curry contract. Now, why has it not been?
Because they can move Seth into the MLE, open up that biannual exception, keep it for next year and all of that. I think that's the route that they're probably headed down, is just go ahead and move Seth into that. Heck, they could put Dwight in that, I guess. I don't know how that all works, and then just save the biannual, and then you have one open roster spot. You can either let some of these guys battle it out at summer league and training camp for that last spot, or you can sign a guy to a minimum contract, or you're doing a trade coming up really soon for a big, and you're taking back a couple other guys in that trade that can fill that spot too.
Oh yeah. The mute got stuck. So yeah, they can do that. I want to go back to the PJ Washington thing though, because Sean Devaney just reported that PJ Washington's really looking to just sign that qualifying offer and to just play for $8 million and become an unrestricted free agent next year. And they could just lose him for nothing after next year.
Him and Miles Bridges, they could just lose them both for nothing.
Here's
the crazy. Also, when you sign the qualifying offer, you have a no trade clause. So
correct.
Him and Miles Bridges can control their own destiny.
This is the Nerlens Noel situation for the Mavericks from years ago, where he kind of had that by signing that. And so to me, if you're looking to trade Tim, you got a couple seconds. PJ Washington wants about $18 million a year. That's what the number has been reported that he wants. It makes sense to me. Now, I don't think that the Hornets should just trade him away for 2 seconds, but I also think they should just pay him instead of just trying to play this game. It feels like they're just trying to squeeze him for all he's worth, because he's not one of their top guys, but he is a perfect role player.
They suck.
LaMelo they just gave him $260 million.
I know. I just don't. They should be paying him. It's not like they have free agents that's just knocking down the doors of Charlotte Hornet to be a Charlotte Hornet. So
yeah. So, but they're playing hardball with him, and if they're playing hardball, then they might as well send him to a team that's actually going to pay him. And the Mavericks should do that. I mean, if that's on the table at all, we don't know that it is. We haven't heard anything that it is. I think Mark Stein's even pushed back on the Mavs, not interest, but activity around PJ Washington, that he said there really hasn't been anything. But if they're just playing hardball with him and just wasting time like that, the Mavericks should go after it. But that's an aside. But they can't do that with the MLE. They'd have to do it in a sign and trade. It would have to be Tim Could they send him JaVale? I don't know. I don't know if they'd be interested in that, but you could maybe convince them that it's a vet. Like all the things that you just convinced the Mavericks on for them to sign last year, maybe you can convince the Hornets of that this year.
Can we get Kai Jones back?
But that's a move that I think they should do. Can we get who?
Kai Jones. I kind of like him.
He had a couple of good moments in summer league. So our connection is not the best. So apologies to everyone. But so with this MLE, the Mavericks will probably just split it up. They'll probably sign Seth into it, and then maybe they'll sign one more player with it, and they can sign more than the minimum. So maybe somebody becomes available over the next couple of weeks here, and the Mavericks say, hey, instead of getting the minimum from someone else, you can get a little bit more from us. And so that's something that I think they can do with it. But does this signal that the Mavericks are moving on from this MLE or giving it to one player? Do you think that's some kind of failure that they weren't able to use this?
No, I mean, they tried. They thought, I mean, they put everything in there for Matisse Thybulle. So, they tried really hard. They were probably pretty confident in it, and it didn't work out. I would much rather them try to use the MLE. It doesn't work. And I would rather that happen instead of them handing $12 million a year to a dude who doesn't deserve it just so you can use it. So it's not like there's 2 or 3 other guys on the market right now that I'm like, all right, that's the guy y'all should have gotten or you should go get right now. There's just not too many other names out there for that $12 million mark. Can I ask you a big man trade question before the last
I was gonna say, should I go over the list? Should I go over the list that we did the other day of the players that are? I mean, there's just not guys that you're interested in. I mean, you started with PJ Washington, obviously, but you're not going to get him for that. It's like Derek Jones Jr., Terrence Davis, the Mavericks have been connected to. Ayo Dosunmu is restricted, like you mentioned earlier. And there's just a bunch of minimum guys. I mean, Christian Wood, honestly, is probably the best player that's left on this, and that's just not going to happen. Like they're not going to bring him back. He's only gotten minimum offers. Mark Stein reported that. He's only been given minimum offers from other teams. So the Mavericks aren't just going to overpay to bring him back into this situation where Jason Kidd didn't want him really. But yeah, ask me a big man question.
We know they're shopping for a big right now, looking all around the league. And I just wanted to revisit this one real quick. There's no way you would take Gobert for a cheap trade offer, right?
No way would I accept Gobert? Question mark.
I've just thought about it more with the whole assistant coach hire, Dennis Lindsey, and all of that. I'm like, I don't know what Minnesota's going to end up doing. I mean, everybody guesses they're going to trade Cat, but is there a world in which they just try to hey, we know we overpaid. We want to keep Cat and Ant together. Could we get a first out of it and a couple wings or something like that? Should you even be interested in Dallas and having 3 $40 million players? And does that, if it was a package of like Tim, JaVale, I mean, you're past the Rashawn Holmes thing and a first round pick, is that guarantee you the finals?
No, no, I don't think it does. And that's the reason why you don't look at it and say, oh yeah, they should think about that. I think I'd be more for it if he's on the last year or even the second to last year of his deal, but he's got 3 years left on this. And you look at it the same way as DeAndre Ayton. Okay, well, would it be worth it just to bring it in? Okay, the difference between DeAndre Ayton and Rudy Gobert is like $10 million difference. Like it is a big difference in salary between those two.
And younger.
So if it was like a 1 year, and if it was a one and difference offensively, I think Ayton's better offensively than Gobert is. If it was just a difference of like 1 year, then I may think about it. But no, I don't think they can because they'd have to give up some, like you said, the Rashawn Holmes thing is done. So they can't just use that as salary filler. They'd have to send Maxey and Tim and JaVale. And at that point, to me, I don't think the Wolves would do that because they got embarrassed with that deal. And they're not just going to flip him. And then everybody would just do the side-by-side comparison of look what they gave up for him. Look what they got for him. I mean, I don't think they would do that.
I agree with you. And, I've been in the camp of like, hey, don't trade for Gobert. I feel like I'm like stuck on an island, like after a plane crash. And like day one, I'm like looking at like tree bark and there's like, hey, there's no way I would eat the tree bark at all. And now I'm like, I'm day like 40 and I'm like entertaining everything. I'm like, man, that tree bark is looking kind of good right now. That's how desperate I am for a new starting center on this team.
And this is what the Mavericks can't do. You just can't get desperate and just go, all right, we'll just take anything. Like, all right,
We'll eat
bring
the
on
tree bark.
Nurkic. Bring on Nurkic. You know, like these are the things you can't do at this point. So, all right, coming up, let's talk about this midseason tournament. What is it? Who do the Mavericks play in this? Should we care about it? We'll talk about all that coming up. All right, Isaac Harris, let's get into this midseason tournament idea. So, Adam Silver announced the midseason tournament the other day at Summer League, actually at the NBA Con that I was at the other day. The NBA announced it. It's a little bit complicated to try to explain, but it's basically like the international tournaments we've seen in the World Cup, FIBA, the Olympics, where you have a group play stage, you have a knockout stage, and then you have a championship game. So in the group stage, every team is put into a group of 5 teams. There's 6 groups of 5 teams, and then each of those teams will play everyone else in there at least once, and then whoever has the best record out of that. It's the same exact thing we've seen in international. I think our audience is going to understand this a little bit better because they've seen, we followed Luka in these events. We followed international competitions, but they play in the group stage. Whoever has the best, they go on to the knockout stage. Then there's a single elimination tournament, basically. You get down to the championship game, and then you play for the championship. But the difference between some of these international competitions and this one is the regular season games and these tournament games are the same up until you get to the last, I think, 2, where like the conference championship and then the actual championship game of the midseason tournament. Those will be extra games, but everything else is a regular season game, which you pointed out that the schedule makers are needing a raise after trying to figure out all of this next year.
Because they're even, particularly Tuesdays and Fridays, are group play games in the month of like November and all this stuff. Listen, the midseason tournament was created because the regular season has gotten boring for a lot of people. Does it change anything with me and you? No, because
and
we
players.
watch.
Gotten boring to players too.
That's true. But for like me and you and for like hardcore fans, we watch every single game. So nothing changes with that. Like you're going to watch every single game either way. I'm actually way more open to this than the play-in tournament. Like,
wow.
Yeah, because
shocking to me.
Because here's my thing with it. It just simply comes down to this. If I'm going to watch all the regular season games and they're all basically going to be that, is it better than it like adding this? Is it better than just regular season games in November? Sure. Like you're not trying to replace, everything matters. The only thing that matters is the Larry O'Brien trophy. So like, if you're going to have this like fun thing in November, and I mean, everything depends on how the players take it, right? If they care, there's a good, I think it's like $500,000 for each player who wins. So like I could legit see Luka being like, oh, I can win and get Theo Pinson $500,000, which is a huge deal for, a huge amount of money for a guy like that. Like,
well, not Theo, but somebody else.
Well, not Theo, but like I could like
Omax.
Honestly,
for Omax, he would do it for Omax. I would do anything for Omax.
For somebody on a minimum contract, like $500,000 is a lot of money. But my whole thing with it is don't try to hype it up like it's the Larry O'Brien trophy, because it's not. So, and the moment a team raises a banner, we're all going to laugh and make fun of it. Like that's 100% going to happen. But if you can add a little bit more spark to a regular season game, then sure. And that's where I'm at on it. Cool. Let's have fun with it.
At the NBA Con, I was listening to Jerry West and Kareem had an interesting point about they asked him about the midseason tournament and the play-in, and Richard Jefferson asked him about it, and Kareem said, I like the play-in because there's teams that gel later in the season than others, and so those teams get a chance to, all right, we're a better team than the teams that are 2 or 3 spots higher than us, even though they have a better record because we didn't gel or we didn't do our trade in the middle of the season or whatever. And so they get a shot at it. And we see the Miami Heat go to the finals last year. I think this is like the opposite of that, where, all right, what if a team breaks down in the middle of the season? At least they had a chance, as they were started at the beginning of the season, like, whole and everything. At least they have a chance to win something in the middle of the season. So I'm into it. I'm into it just like you. You know, I was really open to the play in and thought that it was going to be a good idea. This, I'm not 100% sure it's going to be a good idea. There's Jackson Gatlin from Locked On Rockets. He's mad because I kept bumping the table during Locked On NBA.
Weirdest walk by I've ever seen.
But at least now you know we're two different people. Are we two different people?
True.
But with this, I don't know, them being regular season games, it's going to be so funny because they do this in the WNBA. And I don't know what's a Commissioner's Cup game and what's not a Commissioner's Cup game in the WNBA. Like, I don't know when I go to the Wings games. I don't know when they're playing a Commissioner's Cup game. And they don't actually play like a championship game. It just is who wins the most games in this pool. So with this, at least it's different. I
did see, and I thought this was kind of interesting. I did see to where they're going to have separate jerseys for the midseason.
That's an indicator.
So I was like, that's kind of cool, I guess. Here's the thing. Here's what the NBA doesn't want to happen. A team wins it. They're trying to make the biggest deal about it. The team gets the trophy, and you have a Jimmy Butler or somebody sitting there with just blank face saying, yeah, I mean, we haven't done nothing yet. Like, we're trying to win the Larry O'Brien.
You mean the way Jokic won the championship?
Yeah. But I'm just saying, like I could see some players
won the title.
But I can see some players doing that mid-season, and they're like, dang it. All right, we're trying to hype this thing up. I've just seen a few quotes of like, hey, it's not all, we're trying to not, make it not all about, the NBA title. I'm like, all right, well, that's what it's all about for everybody. Are we putting the NBA Cup on people's basketball reference pages? What
yes, they will.
Okay.
What's the point of doing it if you're not going to assign value to it and you're not going to add it to, like, okay, this adds to your accolades. This adds to you as a winning basketball player, right? I mean,
so Charles Barkley,
they added a third All-NBA team at one point. They added a third All-NBA team, and does that get added to it? Like, oh, it's been two for forever, and now we're not going to. I mean, we just assign value by saying, hey, this is valuable. I was talking to Howard Beck about this, and Howard Beck was down on the idea, and he said, well, it's just not going to have value. So, well, the championship wouldn't have had value unless we said that it has value. So if we say that it has value, it's going to have value. Now it just depends on who says it has value, right?
But every league has to have. I mean, that's how every league ends. That's like saying,
but there's a whole bunch of leagues
put value on the Super Bowl. It's like, well, yeah, every league ends.
We did.
I know, but every league ends with a trophy. You got to hand out a trophy at the end, like,
and lots of leagues have trophies in them. Now, lots of leagues have trophies in the middle as well. The CONCACAF, like, they have this whole thing. Now, the one thing that was pointed out to me is that in the CONCACAF, a lot of like soccer teams will play their B team guys, right? They'll throw those guys out. Now, that would be a big problem if all of a sudden Luka or LeBron or whoever decides this midseason tournament is not for me.
I don't need an 83rd game.
And they sit for these games, or they sit for the championship game because they're like, it's extra and it doesn't matter. If they sit for those games, then Adam Silver and this idea is toast, like just completely dead in the water.
I'm ready for the Suns to win this thing, and for everybody to make Chris Paul getting the NBA Cup as his ring. It's not even a ring. I guess you just have a cup at home, or
I think the funniest part about this is, all right, we should one day we should do this. They should definitely do it at Locked On NBA, but we should rank the funniest winners of the midseason tournament because it's Wolves number one, right? Because of the play-in.
Cat would say that's more impressive than Bill Russell's 11 titles. Like,
we were the first one. Bill Russell was the first to, win the 11 titles, and he helped integrate the league. He did a lot of good things, but we were the first to win the midseason tournament.
You know how hard that was?
On Pat Beverly's pod next. The next funniest would be any team Patrick Beverly is on, because does he do the jump on the scores table and throw his jersey thing off again? Does he do that? Chris Paul one would be funny.
I need the Suns to win it and then get put out in like the second round of the playoffs and be like, you want a cup. So is a banner getting raised?
Do the Sixers? Is the Sixers a funny one because Harden and Embiid can't get out of the second round, and then all of a sudden they win this? Does that count for anything for them?
I mean, we're laughing about it, but I mean, this is right around the time that Luka goes off every year, and November, December is Luka time. So, I mean, I don't know. We could be making a Vegas trip in the first weekend of December.
I'll just stay. I'll just stay here. Should I just
until
stay
December?
here?
You don't have enough pants
Marty,
for that.
It's very true. Yeah. So and this is what it is. It's not even a 1A 1B, the championship and this cup, right? I think it's a 1 and then a definite 2 as far as importance of winning. And I don't think the NBA is going to try to. I don't think they're going to try to hype it like it's another championship.
I don't know. I think they're going to hype it a ton. They've already hyped it so much.
Well, they have to hype it a little bit. Like they have to at least show, all right, this does matter to a degree. But yeah,
I think it'll be fun. Like I think it'll be fun, and it doesn't factor into, like, we could do a whole pod on why I'm against play-in versus why I'm for the midseason thing, because the midseason things just make adding more fun, and it has no ramifications on the actual playoffs for the real trophy and all that. Like, you're just adding a little bit more spark to some November regular season games and a weekend in December that we can all, like, okay, cool, watch a meaningless. I don't know. I saw somebody the other day also say this is an opportunity for some young teams to play in like a bigger, like, atmosphere.
Yeah,
like
100%.
And I was like, okay, I can.
Except they have to reach the knockout stage.
Yeah, and then, like, are we sure the Vegas crowd's going to be that crazy?
This city does love basketball. I mean, they showed up for this. They showed up for Wemby. They filled this arena. I think they do care that they're the next city to get an NBA team when expansion eventually happens. So I think they will. But yeah. So let us know in the comment section. What do you think about the midseason tournament? What do you think the Mavericks' next move is? I'm still here in Vegas through tomorrow, so we'll be here for the Mavs' next Summer League game. So I'll have a podcast right after that. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs.
Peace out.
Boom.